chapter 10, verse 1 of Hebrews, for the law, the Torah, since it has only a shadow, please note, of the good things to come, and not the very form of things, right? The Lord hasn't got the substance. Look at your shadow when the sun is shining from behind you. It's very non-substantial, right? The law, broad statement, the Torah has only, you see the contrast, a shadow of the things to come, and not, notice the contrast, and not the very form. The shadow has not got the substance or form. That law can never, by the same sacrifices, now he's talking about the sacrificial law. How come that was commanded under the law of Moses? Endlessly, right? Because everybody can see at least that the sacrifice of Christ has superseded the law of sacrifices, which is massive. What they don't see, some of them, is that the rest and the peace that Jesus gives us, and his being elevated above all powers at the right hand of the Father, that supersedes a weekly obligatory Sabbath keeping, which is no joke. There are huge social issues involved here. If you don't eat pork, then you are in some difficulty when you're invited to dinner in an area where pork is accepted as normal. This goes for Sabbath keeping. In England, where we used to live, the sun sets sometimes at 4 o'clock on a Friday. And if the boss was not willing to let you off early, or much worse, the Feast of Tabernacles, which lasts for a whole week or 8 days even, you lose your job. So these are enormous social issues.
The writer of Hebrews puts it on par with circumcision of the flesh.
Yes.
When they write in Hebrews 7:12 that if the priesthood is changed,
yes,
then the law needs to be changed too.
And it also says in Hebrews that the new covenant was entored on better promises. The word Torah there, it's not in the English. It was entored, the new covenant, on better promises. You'll find that in chapter 10. What about all those sacrifices that were offered? Was that from God? You bet it was. Is it from God now that Christ has come? No. That's very clear. You've got to think in a linear fashion. Otherwise, you fall into the trap of mixing the covenants. I've heard of people recently saying they're not in the new covenant. That can't happen until the future, when the covenant will be made with Israel and Judah. That will also happen. But if we're not in the new covenant, we're not being saved. Because Paul said that he, Paul, was a minister of the new covenant. But now, Jesus has obtained a more excellent ministry by as much as he is also the mediator of a better covenant than the old one, which has now been entored, enacted in our English, Torahised, made into Torah. That's a new Torah, on better promises. So don't want to go back to the less good ones. For if that first covenant had been faultless, there would have been no need for a second one. But finding fault with them, that's God finding fault with the people, he says, behold, the days are coming, and those days have come, says the Lord, when I will effect a new covenant. It could be renewed, if you're thinking of one covenant, or it could be a brand new one, if you're thinking of a second covenant, with the house of Israel, with the house of Judah. Not like the covenant which I made with their fathers, through Moses that would be, on the day when I took them by the hand from Egypt. That was Moses, wasn't it? Clearly, not like that one. They didn't continue, they didn't get it right, they kept breaking it. And I did not care for them, says the Lord. It's interesting. Well, this is the new covenant, verse 10, that I will make with the house of Israel, and has now been made with us who are the Israel of God. That's an important fact. If you deny that we are the Israel of God, Galatians 6:16, you're implying that we're not in the new covenant. That's very dangerous. It's going to be made in the future as well, with a collective conversion of now blinded Israel. Most important, both things are true. Not either or, it's both and. But for the moment, we are these new people of God. Verse 10, this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel, and the house of Judah is added there in the Old Testament quote. After those days, and that happens to be where we are now, in those latter times, I'll put my laws into their minds. That should be happening now. God is placing his law of love and other laws in our hearts and minds, anti-abortion laws, and any law that that destroys the great teachings of love. Verse 13, when he said a new covenant, he has made the old one obsolete. Whatever is becoming obsolete, now he says there is some extension, I'm not exactly sure how to explain that, but it's growing old, ready to disappear. So the major point here is do not keep the Jewish calendar. Do not. That's a command. You are disobeying God and Jesus if you insist on doing what God says don't do. Don't let anybody tell you what to do in food and drink and holy days, Sabbath and new moons, which those things are a shadow, always a negative word. Always a negative word in this parallel. You would go to the one in Hebrews 10, Hebrews 8. It's negative, both because a shadow is negative in itself. Secondly, because in Hebrews, that shadow was only a shadow, a mere shadow, and something else, or not the real thing. There you get the contrast, right? It was a real shadow. It was not the substance. You see the contrast there. It's absolutely clear. It's the only way you can do Bible study is by comparing verse with verse. Do not keep the shadow. It's doing you no good at all. Don't get physically circumcised. It's not doing you any good. If you do, you're going to have to keep the whole law. Don't go there. And then stronger than anything, Paul says, why in the world are Jews persecuting me? Jesus himself hints at all that. That's another subject. But Jesus said, listen, the Moses divorce rule was temporary as a concession, but it was not like that from the beginning. There Jesus is flat out changing the law of Moses. Whatever that prescription was exactly in Moses doesn't matter. It's out of date now.